Israel says Hezbollah struck sensitive air traffic base in the north and warns of another war. Blinken says Turkey is committed to a positive role in post-war Gaza as he opens a diplomatic push. An Al Jazeera journalist is the fifth member of his family killed by Israeli strikes on Gaza. Today is Monday, January 8th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. Hezbollah has struck an air traffic control base in northern Israel, the Israeli military says. It warns of another war with the Iran-backed militant group. The increase in cross-border fighting gives new urgency to U.S. diplomacy efforts as Secretary of State Antony Blinken prepares to visit Israel on his latest Mideast tour. The U.S. has urged Israel to wind down its blistering offensive in Gaza and shift to more targeted attacks against Hamas leaders. An airstrike near the southern city of Rafah killed another 2 journalists on Sunday. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Turkey is committed to playing a positive, productive role for post-war Gaza and prepared to use its influence in the region to prevent the Israel-Hamas conflict from broadening even more. The latest Mideast mission by America's top diplomat opened Saturday, with talks in Turkey and Greece. Blinken then goes to the Mideast for not necessarily easy conversations with allies and partners about what they are willing to do to build durable peace and security. Developments in Lebanon, northern Israel, the Red Sea, and Iraq have put intense strains on what had been a modestly successful U.S. push to prevent a regional conflagration since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. An apparent Israeli airstrike has killed 2 Palestinian journalists in southern Gaza. One was the son of veteran Al Jazeera correspondent Wael Dahdu, who lost his wife, 2 other children, and a grandson, and was nearly killed himself earlier in the war. Dahdu has continued to report on the fighting between Israel and Hamas, even as it has taken a devastating toll on his own family. The well-known TV correspondent has become a symbol for many of the perils faced by Palestinian journalists, dozens of whom have been killed while covering the conflict. The strike on Sunday killed Hamza Dahdu, who also worked for Al Jazeera, and freelance journalist Mustafa Taraya. Officials say the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson has been subjected to numerous shelling attacks from Russian-occupied parts of the Kherson region across the Dnieper River. The head of the Kherson City administration said Sunday that 2 people died in the shelling attacks and several others were wounded. Meanwhile, Russian military personnel marked Orthodox Christmas on Sunday. In Ukraine's northeast Kharkiv region, a man was killed and 2 other civilians wounded in Russian shelling of the Kupiansk district Sunday, according to the Kharkiv Regional Prosecutor's Office. A child was among the wounded. Air defenses shot down 21 of 28 drones launched by Russia. Overnight, the Ukrainian Air Force said. Russia also launched 3 anti-aircraft missiles against Ukraine. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has won an overwhelming majority in Bangladesh's parliamentary election after a campaign fraught with violence and a boycott from the main opposition party, giving her and her Awami League a 4th consecutive term. The Election Commission said turnout in Sunday's vote was about 40%. Authorities blamed much of the violence on the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party, accusing it of seeking to sabotage the election. The absence of a major challenger to Hasina has raised questions over the legitimacy of the election. Israeli officials say a young girl has been killed after police opened fire at a pair of suspected attackers who rammed their car into a West Bank checkpoint. The Sunday evening incident came hours after 9 people were killed in other unrest in the occupied territory, which has experienced a surge of violence since Israel's war against Hamas erupted on October 7th. Israeli police say the ramming took place at a checkpoint just outside of Jerusalem. They say they shot a man and woman inside the car, but that the young girl in an adjacent vehicle was also hit. Medics say the girl, who was reported to be 3 or 4 years old, was pronounced dead. An animal shelter in Poland appealed to the public to adopt or temporarily shelter some of its dogs through a dangerous cold spell. The result of Operation Frost took the shelter in Krakow by surprise. People arrived in droves, waited in lines for hours, and ended up taking home 120 pups. The shelter sent out its appeal with temperatures forecast to fall to around -20 degrees Celsius or -4 Fahrenheit in parts of southern Poland. The shelter had housed some of its 300 or so dogs in outdoor pens. By Sunday, it said it could house the remaining dogs inside in the warmth. Reaction among Catholics around the world is sharply divided over the Vatican's recent declaration giving priests more leeway to bless same-sex couples. Catholic supporters of greater LGBTQ inclusion in the Church welcome the move. But some bishops in Africa, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere say they will not implement the new Vatican policy, viewing it as discordant with the Church's condemnation of sexual relations between gay or lesbian partners. Strikingly, the new flare-up of debate in Catholic ranks coincides with important developments in 2 other major Christian denominations. Both the Global Anglican Communion and the United Methodist Church are fracturing over differences in LGBTQ-related policies. North Korea has again fired artillery shells near its tense sea boundary with the South. Seoul said some 90 rounds of artillery were fired on Sunday. Meanwhile, the influential sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un mocked the South's ability to detect its weapons launches. She said that on Saturday, her country's military only detonated blasting powder, simulating the sound of coastal artillery. South Korea has said that some 60 rounds were fired on Saturday. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff dismissed Kim Yo-jong's statement as a comedy-like, vulgar propaganda meant to undermine the South Korean people's trust in the military and stoke divisions. Here's what to know about the night South African Olympic runner Oscar Pistorius shot Reeva Steenkamp more than a decade ago in a killing that jolted the world and shattered the image of a sports superstar. Pistorius, a world-famous double amputee sprinter who competed on carbon fiber blades at the 2012 London Olympics, was freed on parole Friday, having served nearly 9 years in prison for murder. He has always maintained he shot Steenkamp in a tragic mistake in the pre-dawn hours of Valentine's Day 2013, thinking she was a dangerous intruder in his home. Prosecutors said he killed Steenkamp, a 29-year-old model and reality TV star, intentionally, and made up the intruder story. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Monday, January 8th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.